This is Mike Mcmaster from the Wood County Museum, and we are going to do the second part of our program about Wood County history called The Odds and Ends of Wood County. In the 21 years of working at the Wood County Museum, I have seen many things driving throughout Wood County and beyond, and these are some of the things. Now, this falls into the category we see it all of the time. And what is it? Perhaps you have driven by this object in Bowling Green and wondered what it was. And today we are going to talk about the Veterans Monument jet aircraft at the Wood County Airport in Bowling Green off of Poe Road. And there it is. It has recently been restored by the students and the administration of the airport. Now, I had driven by this many, many times over the years and wondered what it was. And I thought to myself, I think, is an F-80 Shooting Star. And I was incorrect. And what it really is a T-33A Shooting Star. Now, I can tell you that that was made by Lockheed Aircraft in Burbank, California, and handed over to the United States Air Force in 1954 because of one important feature added to that aircraft, which is the fingerprint. It tells me the entire history of that aircraft. Now, the T-33A Shooting Star was in operation from 1948 to 1959. And the United States Air Force found that it was a good training jet, and it was a good jet aircraft for reconnaissance, not a very good jet fighter. And even though it was only in operation until 1959, they were using it off the coast of Laos in Southeast Asia up until 1961. Now, here is a little clue as to what is on our jet aircraft in Bowling Green. Above is a very tiny photograph of a picture from World War I taken in Egypt in 1916. This is in my collection. That type of aircraft is a DH-1A, a 14 squadron stationed in Egypt in 1916. And this photo and what is written on the back shows the tail number of that aircraft. It is not just DH-1A, it is DH-1A number 4608. And because of that tail number, I can tell you that the pilot of that aircraft is that man there, Lieutenant E.A. Floyer. His observer, it was a two-seater, was Lieutenant C.V. Palmer. And they flew that aircraft against the Ottoman Turks in what is today Israel and Egypt. Now, the Ottoman Turks had many, many horses, but not many aircraft. And that aircraft, although obsolete on the Western Front in France, was safe to fly in what is today Egypt and Israel and Palestine. Now, the Ottoman Turks had many horses. They did not have aircrafts to shoot it down, but what they did have is German anti-aircraft guns. And DH-1A number 4608 was shot down in March of 1916, and the pilot and observer were prisoners of war until 1918. Now, back to our story. It is the tail number of that T-33A. It is number 34932. It is the only T-33 with that tail number. And because of this, there it is, It was manufactured by Lockheed Aircraft in Burbank, California. It was handed over to the United States Air Force on 2 June 1954. And in 1954, it was at Williams Air Force Base. It went to Scott Air Force Base in 1955, Moody Air Force Base in Georgia, all the way to 1965. It went to the 180th Tactical Fighter Group of the Air National Guard at Toledo Express Airport. That is our local Tactical Fighter Group of the Ohio Air National Guard, where it was ready to be dropped from the inventory of the Air Force and transferred to the museum program. And our jet aircraft sitting at the Bowling Green Airport off of Poe Road has the tail markings and all of the other markings of the 180th Ohio Air National Guard. Now, it is interesting to note that that is the last tail marker. Now we know about what this aircraft is. Now, I have been to many cemeteries throughout Wood County, probably every single cemetery in Wood County, and I have been to many cemeteries outside of Wood County, and I came across an interesting gravestone. Now, this story is about an interesting gravestone I saw in the year 2003. It is the story of that person and how that story from World War II comes back into recent memory many, many years later. And there is the tombstone. It is the monument to Robert Allen Carter. He was a torpedoman third class of the USS Herring. He was born in 1922. His submarine was lost off the Kurile Islands in 1944. And I knew he was on a submarine, the name of the vessel, Herring, and the device above, the dolphins with the submarine device. I knew he was a submariner from World War II. His body is not buried there. That is just a memorial. Now, what do we know about Robert Allen Carter? That is his draft card. He was 19 years of age. He was in Fostoria working at the Electric Autolite Spark Plug Division, and he lived in Seneca County. He was at 138 West Center Street, and he was 5'4" and approximately 116 pounds. Probably a good size to work in a submarine. And his birthday, coincidentally, was December 7th, 1922. And when Pearl Harbor was bombed on his birthday years later, perhaps that is why he went into the Navy. There is his picture, and I, as an old Army infantry veteran, have been told that the patch on the right is actually torpedoman's mate first class, not third class. But there he is at his house. There is the submarine device he would have worn. And the USS Herring was commissioned on 4 May 1941. There it is. This is a picture of the crew. Perhaps he is in that photograph. I've never been able to identify. Now, the USS Herring participated in Operation Torch, the Allied invasion of North Africa in 1942. It patrolled the Atlantic Ocean and the Mediterranean, and there wasn't a lot for it to do there. And in 1943, it was at Pearl Harbor in the Pacific. It had 7 successful patrols, and On 21 May 1944, on its eighth patrol, it departed Midway Island. Now, the green star at the bottom is Hawaii. The blue star is Midway in the Pacific. That was the American naval base at Midway. And the large red star above Japan is the Kurile Islands. Now, on 1 June 1944, the captain or commander of that submarine probably raised its periscope and saw that volcanic island, which the Japanese called Matua, or I can't speak Japanese, but it was the Matua Island. Normally, it is an uninhabited volcanic island in that Kurile Island chain, except during the war, as we can see on the right, an aerial reconnaissance, the Japanese had built an airfield there protected by a tank brigade, Japanese tank brigade. Everything coming to that island, all the supplies, all of the water, all of the food had to be shipped in to the harbor at Matua Island. Now, there's the picture of the commander, Lieutenant Commander David Zabriskie Jr. He had been on the USS Herring for a number of years and now was in command. He was an experienced commander. And he had seen the Japanese ships in the harbor and sunk two of them. But that from the high ground on the island, the Japanese could see his submerged submarine. And that is a bunker, a remnant of World War II, still to this day on that island. And from the high ground, the Japanese defenders were able to shoot at the submerged submarine in that crystal clear Pacific water. And they saw an explosion and an oil slick. And the USS Herring never returned to Midway Island, and they declared it lost. Now, the USS Herring's exact location had been a mystery for years until in the year 2011, a Russian civilian diver alerted the Japanese and the Russians and the Americans that he believed that he had found the USS Herring. In 2017, a modern Russian submarine with radar or sonar going out the sides definitively identified the exact location of the USS Herring. And when I was driving to work, I had seen that gravestone 14 years before, and I was listening to the news, and the news stated that the location of the USS Herring had been found. And in my memory, I had went back 14 years and remembered that I had seen the marker for Robert Allen Carter all those years later. Now, on the island today, the Russians placed a marker commemorating the USS Herring. That is the list of crewmen. That little arrow is difficult to see, shows Robert Allen Carter's name, and it is in Russian. And at the very bottom, the Russians put an Old Testament Bible verse from 2 Samuel 22, verse 5 through 22. And parts of it read, verse 5, the waves of death swirled about me, the torrents of destruction overwhelmed me. And verse 17, he reached down from on high and took hold of me. He drew me out of deep waters. And that is what is on the Russian monument to the USS Herring off the Kurile Island. I find it very interesting that stories from so many years ago, from 1944, from the year 2003 to this very day, have a way of coming back into our memory to this very day. Now, there are many odds and ends of Wood County, and some of them are actually outside of Wood County I have found very interesting. And in this series, we will learn about things that we might see along the roads of Wood County. And I hope you enjoyed this program. That is the last slide that I have.